access to talent, access to capital.
We need local partners.
Africa is different. Welcome to the D3 Mission Log, where we attempt to share out lessons learned in real time as we're building the largest, most ambitious, most resourced climate tech acceleration effort ever before attempted. I'm Bryan Guido Hassin, the co-founder and CEO of Third Derivative. Usually, I have my co-pilot with me here, Danny Kennedy, who's in Australia right now. But today, we're going to shift seats in the cockpit, and I'm actually going to be leading and moderating the discussion. Really pleased to have my colleague Kelly Carlin here joining me. Kelly's been a vital member of the Third Derivative team since we got started, really helping us focus on geographic markets in Africa, islands, and Southeast Asia. Kelly, would you mind introducing yourself and just telling our listeners a little bit about your background?
Sure. Thanks, Bryan. So I've been working prior to Third Derivative with distributed renewables in sub-Saharan Africa in countries like Ethiopia and Nigeria. And then for the past year with Third Derivative, helping to look at both Africa and Asian startups. So more of a geographic focus than some of the other market sector leads. Most of them have more of a sectoral focus like chemistry or across industry or mobility.
So really pleased to have you join us here today, Kelly. In prior episodes, we've talked about some of the geographic market challenges of places like China, where we've learned that we can't just copy and paste a North American or Eurocentric model and just deploy it there and hope to have success. Recognizing that Africa is itself a big, broad, kind of diverse kind of set of markets, how are we looking at and what are we learning about how to affect kind of startup success within the African context?
Yeah, it's definitely worth noting at the top that it is a very fragmented and varied market, and it's not consistently fragmented either. So there are ways in which we're working with a couple of startups in Nigeria, and there are ways in which Nigeria looks more like the U.S. than it does, say, like a country like Ethiopia or parts of East Africa. But there are some recurring themes that we see in startups that we're working with in Africa, and that I think our partners and other accelerators, funders are seeing in Africa. Some of those themes include challenges around basic infrastructure. That's maybe not a surprise, but it really shapes what startups are focused on and able to do on the ground. So when there are very, very serious power reliability or power quality issues, that can hinder development for a startup. It can create additional costs or otherwise direct startups to certain problems. It can be challenging to hire talent. So finding especially management for startups is generally difficult on the continent. Part of that is a lot of people who go to university leave Africa, and so it's attracting them back to Africa. And then there are priority industries like oil and gas that are able to pay top dollar. So it's not the risk that you take on when you join a startup is not particularly appealing in some of those markets. And the last two challenges are the challenge of setting up back office operations, and that seems like a really simple thing, I think, for a lot of North American or EU or some Asian startups, where it's really easy to worry about payroll, or you don't worry about payroll or HR. Those things are very simple. There's easy tools. Your investors and partners can help you with that. That's tough in Africa. It looks very different. The last challenge is around access to capital, and that looks very different in different markets, but generally it's hard to find follow-on investors. In some markets, there's no local commercial capital market. So just a few of the challenges there that really kind of shape where startups can work and the challenges they face.
So Kelly, that actually matches with my own kind of on-the-ground experience in a prior life when I was spending a lot of time in East Africa and Kenya specifically, spending a lot of time with entrepreneurs where often the feedback I would get, what was holding them back from really taking the entrepreneurial plunge was access to talent, access to capital, and it was almost really, I would say, even confidence, knowing that the ecosystem or the support structure was there to help them be successful. It sounds like, if I understand what you're saying, that may not be limited just to Kenya, and it may not be limited to 2008 when I was there, but actually that's something that a context that persists today.
No, definitely still defining challenges in Africa. And there are nodes like around Nairobi, in Lagos, where there are these ecosystems kind of developing, and there's more and more. There's more capital available. There are, if you need help with IP, there is a lawyer to help you. That kind of thing that is developing, but it's kind of these islands, and it's still challenging.
First of all, recognizing that we're two white guys here talking about serving Africa, just setting that context, recognizing that we're only a few months into our own program, which is itself a learning journey, our first shot on goal. How are we thinking about how best to serve our startups, our investors, our other partners kind of within Africa, maybe in ways that are different or complementary to ways that we're serving our community more broadly?
Oh, those last two challenges, just thinking about talent and capital, those are good ways to think about this. So I think it's becoming increasingly clear that we need local partners on the ground, and that's looking likely to be, for us, accelerators, for other VCs that are working on the ground that are able to do local due diligence really well. They can provide really good day-to-day support. And in some cases, they are providing smaller ticket sized investments for startups working in local or smaller regional markets. And I think the opportunity for us, and you're right that you have to be clear-eyed about the value that we can add, is the connection to global markets. It's connections to global corporates. It's connecting that global element to those players on the ground in Africa that really know what the Kenyan solar market looks like and what the barriers are for growth there.
That's great. So if I can summarize a bit what I'm hearing, it's, Africa is different than some other parts of the world. B, Africa is not its own monolithic thing, but is very kind of fragmented and has a lot of differences within markets. C, there are several key challenges or themes that we see across a lot of the African context. D, a lot of our ability to help is through creating more kind of global connectivity and support, as well as maybe nurturing and supporting some more of the local kind of connective tissue and support networks as well. We usually, Kelly, wrap up these episodes with a kind of startup feature of the week. And I wonder if there's an opportunity to use our startup feature this week as a bit of a case study as well. Do we have any African startups or startups that are active in Africa that we can take a look at?
Yeah, one of our startups is some of the challenges they're facing are I think very, very connected to this. Batteries, which is a Germany-based startup, and they're working in East Africa. And what they're doing is looking to upcycle lithium-ion batteries from automobiles in Europe, and to use those batteries to compete with diesel and petrol gensets on the ground in Africa, in East Africa. And they're German, they're in Europe, and so they have, in some ways, they face a little bit of, the challenges are a bit different because they're based there, but the operational challenges on the ground in Africa are very, very much part of those recurring trends. So it's hard to find operational partners. It's that basic infrastructure, like you don't always have power, you don't always have internet, and the roads are tough. And so getting a product to market is tough. Knowing how customers are receiving the product, if they're having any challenges, that's difficult. But that basic infrastructure is also the opportunity. So like the reliance on expensive and polluting diesel generators, that's really where the opportunity is for them to provide a cleaner alternative. What
kind of impact can they have at scale?
So the impact and the opportunity for them is really big. In Africa, in East Africa, and to an even greater degree in markets like Nigeria, there's a heavy reliance on backup diesel generators. And backup is kind of a misnomer in some of these markets because the power quality is so low, reliability is so low. So in East Africa, it's estimated to be upwards around 10 gigawatts of diesel genset power. That's really high on an LCOE basis, the cost to consumers. And it's polluting. There's a big carbon impact there. So displacing that 10 gigawatts or nearly 10 gigawatts of genset power, that's a big opportunity. There's a chance to expand into other markets like Nigeria, where some estimates have it as high as 40 gigawatts of power comes from gensets. So there's a big impact there. There's also, as with anything in Africa, growth is so fast. And so there's a real mitigation opportunity that if you can move more people off their generators onto renewable power and battery storage, there's an even bigger opportunity than the present because of that rapid growth. There's also an interesting kind of parallel opportunity for them, and that's that lithium-ion batteries on the continent are far, far more expensive than global best prices. So isolated mini grids, interconnected mini grids in Africa pay a very heavy premium for using lithium-ion batteries. And this might be a way to get lithium-ion batteries to market at a much more competitive cost, which makes batteries more competitive with generators that those systems might otherwise rely on. So a kind of second opportunity there.
So that's really interesting. It's almost a cliche to think about leapfrogging technologies in Africa, but it's always been very impressive to me how within Africa there have been these incredible leapfrogs. When I first showed up there, the entire North American and European continents were trying to roll out mobile apps and mobile services, and within Africa it was already incredibly pervasive. Everybody was already doing banking mobily, et cetera. They had kind of leapfrogged the entire kind of software-based banking industry. It reminds me of, we're also trying to push more distributed infrastructure, such in North America and in Europe, in places where there's already a big investment in much more centralized infrastructure. So maybe there's a big leapfrog opportunity here as well. One that, to your point, not only substantially reduces the environmental impact, but also in reducing cost to consumers really acts as an unlocking mechanism for growth and quality of life.
Yeah, it's a great illustration of this opportunity to follow a lower carbon path for development. And I think that's at the root, that's what's really exciting about this kind of technology and startups like Batteries.
Really cool. So Batteries, a startup to watch. Very excited to see their path to scale and impact. Kelly, thank you so much for joining us here today. And thank you to all of our listeners, viewers, fellow explorers participating in the journey. Would love to hear your ideas, comments, feedback, suggestions on how you perceive supporting startup and climate tech impact within the African context. Throw them in the comments below, and please stick with us. We have more and more exciting lessons learned, stories to share as we move forward.